Nice to have honor Rosh Hashanah in that way with a beautiful blessing. Thank you so much. Thank you. So welcome everybody on the live stream this morning, wherever you are, whatever you're doing today, whether you're sitting there in your jammies or having a spiritual experience with the Sunday Times. I know that you are part of our spiritual community. This is the last Sunday in the series on chant as a spiritual practice. And for some of us, we've discovered something magical about the idea of chant as a practice. And for others, it might be sort of an exercise in futility, if you will. But for all of us, though, it's been an opportunity for us to see what else might work as a means to achieving some measure of peace in our lives. The whole idea of chant, of course, is that when we are in the process of chanting, we can't be thinking about anything else. And so this affords us the opportunity to be in peace, The Tibetan Buddhists believe that saying the mantra or prayer, Om Mani Padme Hum, is whether we do it out loud or whether we do it silently to oneself, invokes a powerful, benevolent attention and blessings of, now I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, but Chenerzig is phonetically how it sounds to me. The embodiment of compassion. This is the God of compassion. And viewing the written form of the mantra is said to have exactly the same effect as saying it. And it's often carved into little stones or pendants that people will wear around their neck, and it's placed where people can see them. And even though when wearing it around one's neck, we can't see it ourselves, but the other people who come within our circle of influence can see the stone. It's not unlike the icons of the Catholic faith, for instance, that evoke a certain thought process when viewed. And I remember as a child looking at the statue of the Virgin Mary, and in our Sacred Heart Church where I grew up in Canada, this was a particularly beautiful statue, and I felt a sense of wonder at the serenity of her countenance. Seeing the depiction of Jesus on the cross, and as a child, feeling somehow responsible for that crucifixion because I believed that I'd done something, but I didn't know what that something was. But I told that I had done something to create the crucifixion of Jesus. So very confusing as a child. Needless to say, I preferred looking at the Virgin Mary as opposed to the crucified Jesus on the cross. People who learn about this particular mantra naturally want to know what it means, and they often ask for a translation. However, the words cannot really be translated into something simple or even just a few sentences. All of the Dharma or the truth teachings are based on the Buddha's discovery that suffering is unnecessary. And Ernest Holmes teaches us that with a disease, for instance, once we really face the fact that suffering exists, we can then look at the disease, or we can look at the problem or the challenge more deeply and discover its cause. And when we discover the cause, that the cause is dependent rather on certain conditions, we can explore then the possibility of removing those conditions. And so it is with the Buddha's teachings as well. Ernest, we discovered, borrowed liberally from the other faiths and philosophies, and particularly of the Eastern traditions, because they were congruent with what he believed, so he incorporated them into the science of mind. Buddha taught many different methods for removing the cause of suffering. Methods appropriate for the very different types and conditions and aptitudes of suffering beings, as it were. For those who had the capacity to understand it, the Buddha taught the most powerful method of all, and that was a method based in the practice of compassion. This is very, very important in the traditional Buddhist teaching. It is known as the Mahayana, or the Great Vehicle, because practicing compassion benefits everyone. It benefits all beings without partiality at any level. And it is likened to, in one of the things I read, to a vast boat that carries all beings in the universe across the sea of suffering, but it doesn't actually get down into the sea. It sort of skims the surface of the sea, if you will. And our responsibility as good religious scientists is to work within the framework of a person's disease by acknowledging that there is suffering without getting into the pain of it with them. And like the Buddhists, we practice compassion first, objectivity second, and detachment third. COD. There's your guidelines. Whenever someone comes to you with a problem, or it seems something that seems insurmountable, COD. Think about it as an acronym. Compassion. I can see that you're suffering. How can I help? That's those are the most wonderful words anyone can possibly hear. Objectivity. I can see beyond your suffering and know that the same mind that created the suffering can uncreate the suffering. And detachment, while I know you are in pain, I know that there is a power for good in this universe greater than you are, and you can use it to heal whatever it is that happens to be ailing you. It's very simple, very simple. Within the Mahayana, the Buddha revealed the possibility of very quickly benefiting all beings, including oneself, by entering directly into the awakened state of mind, or the Buddhahood, without delay. That's what we need to do. Consciousness on demand, another COD, right? We need to go to that consciousness of wellness. We need to see beyond whatever it is that a person may be suffering. There are different ways of accomplishing this, but the most powerful and at the same time the most accessible is to link one's own mind with the mind of the Buddha or the enlightened one, and realizing that there is only one mind and that we are part of it. Now, sometimes easier said than done, isn't it? Sometimes we do have a tendency to get into the muck and mire with someone who's having a challenge or a problem. I don't think we mean to do that particularly, but that's the human experience. Sometimes it's sympathy that someone's looking for, trying to elicit a sympathetic response from us. And if we're good religious scientists, we don't go there. We do not go there with them. In spiritual practice, we imagine ourselves to be Buddha-like, or God-like, as it were. And in the case of the Buddha of compassion, this God is depicted as sitting in the lotus position with the hands like this and the eyes closed. And we see this icon, if you will, all over the place whenever we go to places of worship. And by replacing the thought of myself as me with the thought of myself as this Chenerzig, this God of compassion, I can gradually reduce and eventually remove the fixation of my personal self, which then expands my loving kindness and compassion toward myself and toward others. And this is something like what Joyce was trying to share with us today, the art of blessing. Because when I bless someone, I can then remain somewhat detached from it. I become the observer of what's going on in their life. And through the process of substitution, my intelligence and wisdom then becomes enhanced. And it allows me to see clearly what someone really needs and to communicate with them clearly and accurately. Because sometimes when someone is in a troubled state, they really don't need our sympathy. They don't. They need us to say, wait, you're bigger than this. You're better than this. You're greater than this. I am not now, nor have I ever been the problem. Remember? What I think about is the problem. And if I've thought myself into a state of disease, then I can think myself out of the disease as well. It's a classic case of physician, heal thyself. When I feel compassion and understanding toward myself, then I'm much more able to clearly see what is needed for another person. We can see the process in many different religions and cultures. First and foremost, I must be a clear vessel for healing to take place within me. That's what I've got to do first and foremost. I am not here to make myself better so that you can be better. I'm here to make myself better so that I can be better. I have to find within me that vehicle through which healing can take place in me so that it can also be understood in you. Sherry, as we've done in the past 3 Sundays, we're going to do a little chanting again today. And if you've been here at all for the last 3 weeks, you understand the chant is, God is the love that I am, God is the love that I am, God is the love that I am, God's the love I am.
Choir's going to help out today. God is the love that I am. God is the love that I am. God is the love that I am. God's the love I am. God is the love that I am. God is the love that I am. God is the love that I am. God's the love I am. God is the love that I am. God is the love that I am. God is the love that I am. God's the love I am.
So I've been told by many people throughout the last 3 weeks, they find themselves going to sleep at night singing the chant, God is the love that I am. And they wake up in the morning singing the chant, God is the love that I am. So if anything, we've done our job. We've done our job. In most religious tradition, one prays to the deities of a certain tradition in the hopes of receiving their blessing, which will benefit one in some way. And as with the science of mind and in the Buddhist tradition, the blessing and the power and the superlative qualities of the enlightened beings are not considered as coming from outside there, but are believed to be innate, to be aspects of our own true nature. So rather than praying to a God out there who may or may not grant our wishes, the capricious, judgmental God who says, you know, Karen, you've been a good girl lately. I'm going to bestow certain blessings on you. But John, you know what? Not so much. So we don't work within that parameter anymore. Ernest Holmes believed this to be true, that the God presence was innate. And he embraced this as a general part of the science of mind. It is not I, but the Father within that doeth the works. And he was a Bible scholar. If you read the last part of the science of mind, you will see that. But in doing the visualization practice, it is necessary that we connect with the body, the voice, and the mind. As I pointed out, I can't remember which talk it was in the last 3 weeks, but the body, the voice, and the mind, all three have to be engaged for the Buddha nature to be able to show itself out of the 3 aspects of this practice. By our posture and certain gestures, we connect with the body. By reciting certain words of a liturgy and or a prayer, and by repeating the mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum, we connect with the voice. And by imagining the visual form of the Buddha or whatever our particular idea of the energy or the creative intelligence in the universe, we then connect with the mind. So the mantra from this God of compassion in Buddhism, the words of Kalu Rinpoche said this: through mantra, we no longer cling to the reality of the speech and sound encountered in life, but experience it as essentially empty. Then confusion of the speech aspect of our being is transformed into enlightened awareness. That's why I'm told that most mantras, say for instance, if you went to study transcendental meditation, you would be given a particular mantra. And that mantra, in the initiation process of transcendental meditation, has actually no meaning at all. It's a sound. And the sound then does not distract from the meditator from their enlightened awareness. So when I'm in my meditation and I become distracted by the ducks or the crows outside squawking, then I can use my mantra to bring me back to center. I don't have to often do that anymore. When I first began meditating, I was distracted by everything. And once I began to be a conditioned meditator, then I can go into the meditation and nothing really distracts me. It just becomes something I notice and then I unnotice it, if you will. The enlightened awareness includes whatever we might need to understand in order to save any beings, including ourselves, from suffering. For that reason, the entire Dharma, the entire truth about the nature of suffering and the many ways of removing its causes, is said to be contained in those 6 syllables: Om Mani Padme Hum. And the last thing I want to address today is the power of speech. Kalu Rinpoche also said the second aspect of transformation, he calls it, transformation is defined as of confusion into wisdom, concerns our speech. And although it may be easy to consider speech as intangible, that is, that it simply appears and disappears, we actually relate it to something real. We think our speech is real. It is because we become so attached to what we say and hear that speech has such power. But words really don't have power. They don't. Mere words, which have no ultimate reality, can determine our happiness and suffering. It's so interesting how we can let a single word that someone might say to us cause us to suffer. We get hurt feelings over something someone says. And we create pleasure and we create pain through our fundamental clinging to sound and speech. You know, if I have to believe the negative words that someone says to me, then I also have to believe the positive words. If I believe the positive words, then I have to believe the negative words. So, you know, maybe it's like becoming sort of dog-like in our proportion. You know, when we see dogs in cartoons, you see, no, 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 Fido. No, 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 Fido. Fido doesn't hear any of the words except its own name. So maybe that's funnier to me than it is to anybody else. But I just think to myself, wouldn't that be wonderful if we didn't have to be affected by the words that other people say? But as I said earlier, when we recite and meditate on a mantra, which is deemed an enlightened sound, it is the union of sound and emptiness. It has no intrinsic reality or meaning. As I said, it is simply the manifestation of pure sound experienced simultaneously with its emptiness. That's so esoteric. But I just love this idea. It has no intrinsic reality or meaning. It is simply the manifestation of pure sound experienced simultaneously with its emptiness. It's like the music between the notes. You know, it's the sound between the notes. It's like what Deepak Chopra would call that bliss part of us, between what is and what isn't kind of thing. And through the use of a mantra, we no longer cling to the reality of the speech and sound encountered in life, but experience it as essentially empty. Then the confusion of the speech aspect of our being is transformed into enlightened awareness. At first, when we begin the practice of meditation, the union of sound and emptiness is simply an intellectual concept of what meditation should be. And through continued application, though, it becomes our actual experience, like I said. And here, as elsewhere in the practice, attitude is all important. And the following story is about a teacher in Tibet. This sort of illustrates it. The teacher had 2 disciples, both who undertook to perform 100 million recitations of the mantra of Chenerzi, Om Mani Padme Om. And in the presence of their Lama, they took a vow to do so and went off to complete the practice. One of the disciples was very diligent, though his realization was perhaps not so profound. He set out to accomplish the practice as quickly as possible, and he recited the mantra incessantly, day and night. After long efforts, he completed 100 million recitations in 3 years. That's all he did. Didn't do anything else. He probably ate and slept just a little bit. But the other disciple was extremely intelligent, though perhaps not as diligent, because he certainly did not launch into the practice with the same enthusiasm as the first one. But when his friend was approaching the completion of his retreat, the second disciple, who had not recited very many mantras, went up on top of the hill. He sat down there and he began to meditate then on all the things throughout the universe that were transformed by or into Chenerzi, or into compassion. He meditated that the sound of the mantra was not only issuing from the mouth of each and every being on the planet, but that every atom in the universe was vibrating with it. And for a few days, he recited the mantra in this state of samadhi. And when the 2 disciples went to their Lama to indicate they had finished the practice, the Lama said, "Oh, you've both done excellently. You were very diligent, and you were very wise. You both accomplished the 100 million recitations of the mantra. Thus, through changing our attitude and developing our understanding, practice becomes more powerful." Now, the moral of the story is that we can come to our enlightenment in many different ways. It doesn't have to be just one way. One way is not meant to be more powerful than another way. Chant as a spiritual practice is just one idea. Meditation is just one idea. Prayer is just one idea. It means that through changing our attitudes and developing our understanding, the practice becomes more powerful the longer and the more diligently we practice it. That's the key. That's the key. How much are we practicing what it is that we know can change our lives? This series has been so much fun for me to do, and I know that our chant each week is finding its way really into the psyche of many of the people who've attended. The more we learn, the more we understand. This is just one more aspect of me discovering who I am as a work in progress, as well as who everyone else here is in this sanctuary today, knowing that with God, all things are possible. Will you join me in consciousness, please? And so today, as we go within, it is with the assurance that this God of compassion is at the ready with understanding and with loving kindness. That as I practice the Om Mani Padme Om, I know that it is with a sense of sincerity, that with a sense that when I do this, my voice goes out into the ethers. When I say God is the love that I am, God is the love that God is by means of me. Whatever mantra I use, whatever chant that I decide to use, Om Shanti, whichever one I determine as most effective for me is most effective for everyone else around me. I know today that the living presence of Spirit, by means of me, goes out into my world in miraculous and beautiful ways, because I have settled myself into a peaceful state. I bring that peace and serenity to my work, to my play, to whatever endeavor that I undertake on a daily basis. That when I am settled in the idea that through my presence, through my voice, through my practice, and through my mind, that my world changes, I know that it changes every other thing in my life as well. And so today the blessing is on me. The blessing is from me. I bless each and every person in my personal experience. I bless everyone in my circle of influence. I bless all those I know and all those I am yet to know. Because as I move in and through my own awareness of the power and presence of Spirit in my life, I create an awareness for everyone else in my life to experience the same. And so I release and I let go of my attachment. I release and let go of any suffering I might have. I release and I let go of any pain that might be residual as a part of my cellular memory. And I know that that pure essence of Spirit is within me, moving out into my world in grand and glorious ways. For this awareness today, I'm truly, truly thankful. As I bless these words I have spoken, I send them out into the universe, knowing that they are returned to me multiplied abundantly. And together we say, and so it is.